Hey guys, welcome to our webinar on the Art of Delegation with Think Time. And we are so excited to have Teresa Summerlin and Lucy Faxon from Belay with us today. At Think Time, we really help people to focus on what matters most, even when life is busy, distracting, and demanding. And we don't want to just manage our time. We want to live our life with a purpose. And this is a comprehensive talk. I'm so excited about it because we're not just talking about time management and just getting things off our plate so we can feel good. We're going to actually cover what is it like to actually empower those around us and help them to reach their full potential, while we are also getting some things done that we need to have done as well. I'm totally thrilled about this meeting. So thank you for joining us. And before we get started, Lucy's going to go over a few housekeeping things for us.
Okay, thanks, Christine. Hello, everyone. And I don't know if everyone's familiar with the platform that we're using, which is Zoom video conferencing. So I'll just go over from the very basics. In order to keep it so we hear the speakers clearly, it's best for everyone to stay muted on their audio until you have a question. So if you just hover over the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see a microphone. And if you just click on that microphone, it's muted and everyone's got that. Great. Also, you'll see in the middle there a button called chat. That's what we're going to use for questions. So if you click on that button now, you'll see a screen pop up in the middle of your screen. And you'll see at the bottom there you have a drop down. You can chat to everyone or to individuals. So make sure it's on everyone and feel free to submit questions throughout the conference today, and we'll answer them as we go. And I think that that's it. Teresa, anything I'm leaving out on the protocol there?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think so. If you prefer not to be on video, you can always turn your video off as well.
Right, which is the same bottom left-hand corner, that camera, which it looks like that's what we're going to do.
Great. I think we're ready to get started. I think, let me just do a quick introduction just as far as who we are. Of course, everybody knows Christine with Think Time, the co-founder of Think Time. I am Teresa Summerlin, and I am the strategic partner consultant here at Belay. And then Lucy, of course, is a solutions consultant with Belay as well. So as we go through this presentation, we're really going to be talking about delegation, the purpose for delegation, the way that we delegate, and the way to actually define the success of delegating. So I thought we'd start off by just looking at the word delegation. What does it mean? So if you go to the dictionary and you look up delegation, you're going to see three definitions for delegation. The first is the act of empowering to act for another. The second is a group of persons chosen to represent others. And the third definition is the assignment to others of the authority for particular functions, tasks, and decisions. So delegation is really easy to talk about, but what we have found is that it's actually much more difficult to do. And I think that probably some people in this audience would be in the position to agree with that as well. So one of the first things I want to point out about delegating is kind of the old cliche, the struggle is real. Thinking about, look at all these spinning plates that I have, and I can take the weight of the world on my shoulders. And what we're saying is that that's really out. What's in is empowering and delegating. So really, any great leader today realizes that it is their responsibility to empower the people around them. And they're empowering them by delegating to them, by trusting them enough to delegate. If you're in business for yourself, you really need to get to the point where you're delegating those things out to other people around you, and you're focusing on the things that only you can do to continue to grow your business. And that's really what we're going to talk about quite a bit today. One of the things too I like to point out here is, as we're going through this, keep in mind just kind of thinking about what you are doing on a daily basis. Because one of the things that we find is that leaders, individuals, have a natural tendency to actually do those things that give them the sense of accomplishment. They may not be those highest payoff activities that are going to lead you to growing your organization, but they may be those tasks that you kind of hide behind to keep from having to do the hard stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of think about that as we go through this presentation.
Teresa, on that point, have you read Smarter, Faster, Better by Charles Duhigg, or heard of that book lately?
I have not. I have not.
It's so in line with what you just said. There's some new research that has just come out where they were looking at a company, and they were all about SMART goals, and they realized that all these people were accomplishing these SMART goals, but they would go to a certain department and kind of check up on what they were doing, and everyone felt so productive in this department, but it was not accomplishing anything of value. And so everyone felt great because they were checking things off, they were getting those dopamine shots in their brain, but they were not accomplishing anything of real value. So the company completely restructured everything. So they were doing stretch goals and SMART goals, really looking at the results based, how much results are we getting from these activities, not just how do we feel that we're checking things off. So really that research really just aligns with what you're talking about.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur or a small business owner,
Mm-hmm.
You're on your own so many times. And so it is very easy to fall into that trap of doing what you're comfortable doing. It's hard, and it's hard, like stretch goals and stretching yourself and looking for opportunity to grow is a very difficult thing. And it's really difficult when you're doing it on your own. So that's why we talk about that. Like, we've got to get away from hiding behind those tasks that just give us that immediate, like the shot of dopamine. I love that. But that gives us that immediate sense of success, and focus on the things that are really going to truly help us reach those goals.
Yes.
So high level, what's ahead? We're going to talk about when to delegate, why you don't delegate, what to delegate, and then how to delegate. So when to delegate? When you're working too many hours, obviously, right? If you are burning the midnight oil, and your family life is suffering, your physical health is suffering, you're working too many hours, it's time to delegate. When you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're entrenched in the day-to-day details, when you're unable to move the ball forward to grow your organization, or when you're spending time on tasks that you don't enjoy. So these are just a couple of things to think about as to answer that question. When is it time to delegate? And realize that when you're overwhelmed, when you're spending time on tasks that you don't enjoy, that affects not only the quality of your life, but it affects how you show up for your team and how you show up for your clients. And this is one of the reasons why we really want to get out in front of the whole concept of delegating, to be thinking about when you do have a team and when you do need to move forward, what is it that you're going to delegate, and actually not get to this point of being overwhelmed or spending all of your time on tasks that you don't actually enjoy. So we really want you just to be able to show up and really be there for your team in a way that makes sense.
I love that. There's so much about leadership that's an emotional transfer of energy. And if we are depleted, we cannot lead with that energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about why we don't delegate. Because like we said, talking about delegation is easy, but it's actually harder to do. The good news is that it's a learned skill. The bottom line is that we're building trust, and we're learning to trust those that work for you. And I love this quote by Stephen Covey: delegation is an extension of trust, and it is the most compelling form of human motivation. Trust, that is. So when I read this and I think about this, why wouldn't we want to be surrounded by motivated individuals on our team? And I think, when you realize that you're not delegating, you're actually communicating, I don't trust you. Of course, people are not going to be motivated, but positive motivation comes with all kinds of great things: new ideas, creativity, self-starters. So there's I think a huge benefit from realizing, just the importance of delegating.
Mm-hmm. There was something I told you about yesterday. I had an experience earlier this year that this quote really speaks to. I am blessed to be from a great heritage of awesome and perfect people. And I was able to go to a life celebration of my uncle's in January in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And over again, I heard and I didn't know, I'm his niece, and so I didn't know all that he had been doing his whole life, but it's really neat to hear the big perspective of a person's life all at once. And he had started countless foundations, and I don't remember what they all were. Or I knew that he and my aunt had been involved in so much just wonderful work their whole lives. But my favorite one was in Ocean City. It's, kind of like Vegas, Atlantic City, Ocean City area. They started a foundation for people who came out and lost all their money and had nothing. And they're just sitting there in Ocean City with nothing. And they started a foundation to serve these people. And I just thought that was one of the most beautiful things. But what I discovered, let's mute that. What I discovered was that these grown men were here sharing at his funeral with tears in their eyes. Carol believed in me before I had a clue I could do something. He was the first one to say, you can do this. And so he was an expert delegator. And I didn't know that about him either, but he would delegate these foundations to people. He would say, here's the big idea. You're good at this. You take this job. You're good at this. You take this job. And these men would come and they would make it happen. And they would become so much more than they knew they could be. So there's just so much creativity, purpose, and value in this topic. I love it. And, decades later, tears in a grown man's eyes because he was trusted with a task before he knew that he could do it. So I'm becoming increasingly passionate about this topic. So thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful story. Just realizing that as a leader, it's our job to inspire those around us. And just keeping in mind that when we're not inspiring, when we're not delegating, we're not trusting, we're really robbing those people of an opportunity to grow. And I mean, I think that's very, very important. I think we had to. Okay, so let's talk about how to get started. Again, realizing that it's easier to talk about than it's actually to do. But one of the things that we want to keep in mind when we're delegating is just how to build trust. When we start delegating, we want to start by assigning the small tasks, get some quick wins, build confidence. Just working together with your team member or an individual, and getting those quick wins under your belt will quickly start to build that momentum around getting more and more trust to develop, and then that opportunity to delegate more and more. So it's a great starting place to grow that trust. Some of the common misconceptions about delegating, I think, is really important to cover as well. The first misconception around delegating is, I have absolutely no time to do this. And the deal is, if you've waited too long, you probably don't have time to do this. As a leader, again, the natural tendency is to do everything, to assume that you're the best to do that. And we need to get real with ourselves and just be honest. No, you or I may actually not be the best person to do a particular task, right? But having no time, we hear this a lot from the leaders that we serve here at Belay. And the fact is, when you make time, because it does take time to delegate in the beginning, but when you make time, the ROI on that time that you've invested in your team member, in delegating to them, comes back tenfold. So think about that. If you have to really program your mind to think, I'm spending an hour going over this process with my team member, but once he or she has it, your time that you can invest somewhere else is going to pay itself back 10 times, if not more.
Yeah, that's another big think time thought that we do. We really evaluate our activities based on the results that we get, not the activities that we're putting forward. I think I learned that in my early 20s, working back at my church, from which we have at least one person joining us in from those days. And I remember for the first time, it was a completely transformative thought that, oh, this activity is not valuable because I'm working so hard. This activity is valuable because I'm getting this amount of results out of it. So it's totally a different transformative way to see things. And a lot of us still default back to, well, I'm working really hard, I should be getting really good results. And that's not always the case.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, one of the other common misconceptions kind of in line with that is like, I can do it faster.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, maybe at first you can, but as you delegate and more stuff comes off your plate, think about the fact that your time now is less fragmented. So as a leader of an organization, starting your business or whatever, you have time to focus on those high payoff activities, the doing the things that are actually going to impact the growth and the solidness of your organization. So whether you're casting vision, whether you're in business development, you've got that unfragmented time now to focus on doing these things.
Teresa, if I can interject on that, I'll just say, having talked to many leaders here at Belay, that is usually the first thing that I hear, especially if you've grown your business on your own from scratch. You've worn all the hats, you've done everything from day one. So it's hard to let go, and it's hard to hand it off to someone that you don't trust. So it still goes back to the trust. And if you can lay that foundation of trust, even if you're 6 months into it, you made that hire, you trusted that hire, even if you just do it in baby steps, at this point forward, they may not do it better or faster than you yet, but if you trust in them and you empower them, I can guarantee you that they will do it. I've seen it time and time again. It's invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then again, just as that leader, having the time in your day, because we all have 24 hours in a day, but having that time in your day to do the things that are going to make a difference in the growth of your organization. Okay, another common misconception, they're going to mess it all up and they're not going to meet or exceed my expectations. Well, maybe there are going to be some missed expectations along the way. But I think if you think about what the payoff is, wouldn't it be worth the risk and the time that you invest in delegating? And wouldn't it be great if in fact they didn't mess it up? So if you don't try at all, then, or if you don't try to delegate at all, then you're really robbing yourself of all of the benefit from delegating, as we talked about. It's just worth the risk. It's worth the risk to try it and then be surprised when expectations are met. But going into it, I think we need to also go back, like I said earlier, and look in the mirror and realize that we are not equipped to do all things perfectly, and that there are other people around us that have skills and have the desire and have the ability to do things even better than we can. And we just have to face up to that. So there's a lot of different tools, and Lucy, jump in here and speak to this as well. But there's a lot of different tools that we use and recommend at Belay when we're coaching our clients on how to delegate, that kind of mitigate some of these misconceptions as well. One of them is the screencast or the Jing application, which really takes care of this particular misconception. If I have to take the time to explain it, then I should just do it myself. So again, yes, you're implementing you're taking the time in the beginning, but when you use some of the tools that we recommend, you have you have a way to actually keep the tasks that you're explaining and delegating documented. For example, through the use of a Jing, which is really, Lucy, do you want to explain what a Jing or a screencast is?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, thank you.
So one of the things that we do, and obviously it might be a little different for you since you are an established organization, but when we're starting with a virtual specialist with a leader, we certainly lay down some best practices from the get-go. One of them is to meet once a week, face-to-face, whether we use Zoom video for that. And again, we're tracking very specific benchmarks during this onboarding process, if you will, but this certainly could be your starting point. And the benchmarks we're actually walking through right here. The first is establishing trust. Once that is established, we look at creating efficiencies and streamlining things. And that's with the use of technologies and platforms like Jing that Teresa is talking about. So a lot of this is reflection on your part as to how you're doing things and where you're spending the bulk of your time, and letting someone help maybe add some technology to streamline that for you. Teresa mentioned Jing. If you're one of those that doesn't have time, but maybe you're process-minded and the details are important to you, Jing is a way to literally record what you're doing at the time that you're doing it. So if, for example, you're responding to an email, you can actually use Jing to say, hey, this email is from Bob. I'm telling Bob that I need him to go to talk to Susie about X, Y, and Z and to use report A, B, and C, and this is where you find it. And that Jing simply creates a video library for that person so they can follow your steps without you having to stop and explain it every time. That's just one tool. There's actually a ton of them out there that'll help do that. It's just making yourself open to it. Hard habits die hard.
Well, and there is no magic wand. I mean, the use of technology, documenting your processes, recording explanations with Jing, or even just an audio recording for the person that you're delegating to utilize at a later date, is a way to really make for effective delegation, so that you're not having to explain over and over and over again. But one of the things that that we're very, very big on is pointing out that around delegation, or really actually in any good working relationship, communication is important. But when you're delegating, success comes from over communicating the expectations and being very purposeful in communicating the detail around what you're delegating. Okay, so moving on to what to delegate. What you see here on the screen is what we call our delegation tool or delegation matrix. And it's a really simple diagram for you to follow. The upper left-hand quadrant, what you love, you keep. Now, as a leader, the items in this quadrant should be anything associated with developing your business, with developing your culture, with casting vision. So those are the types of things you want to keep in that quadrant. To the right of that is kind of interesting, because that quadrant is designed to house those things that you love, but that you really should be delegating to other people. It's a great opportunity for you to coach and to invest in your team by delegating these types of items. An example of that would be, for me, would be, I love LinkedIn, right? But if I am running an organization, keeping my LinkedIn profile perfect is probably not the best and highest use of my time. So that would be something that I would want to delegate. If I enjoyed working in our CRM, again, as a leader of an organization, probably not where I want to spend most of my time, but CRM updates and CRM management would be something that you would want to delegate. Now, the third quadrant, the lower left-hand corner, the things that you hate, delegate. For a lot of leaders, that's going to have anything to do with bookkeeping, invoicing, that type of thing. And then the last quadrant is really things that others don't like and you don't like. Find somebody that does like it and that is a sweet spot for them, and delegate that as well. So it's kind of interesting, because I think with this diagram, what happens throughout, as you're growing an organization, there are things that you hold on to that you have to hold on to because you're just not in the position to delegate it out yet. And those things typically fall in the third quadrant, which is the things that you hate, delegate. There's always certain tasks that you do hold on to, but the important thing is to identify that and then set up a time frame or a deadline for yourself that you intend to delegate that certain item out. So for example, if it's bookkeeping, because as a leader, typically bookkeeping is not something that you are necessarily engineered to do, unless you're an accountant, of course. But if you find yourself having to hold on to that, set up a plan, make a plan, and create a deadline for when you're going to delegate that out.
That's good.
Teresa, I want to interject there, and I know that they probably aren't going to like to hear this, but the thing that I always suggest that leaders try and wrap their head around delegating is email and calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Even though that's probably the hardest thing to give up, that's probably the bane of your existence 90% of the time. And if you, again, establish trust and empower someone to do that for you over time, you'd be amazed how much time you got back in your day.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of leaders will tell you that they utilize their inbox sort of as their task management system. It's not necessarily the most effective way to get things done. So, and what you're saying goes kind of into this slide. Ask yourself the following questions when you're deciding what to delegate. Look at what you do daily, weekly, and monthly. And then ask yourself, what projects or tasks are you as a leader involved in that you need to get out of? What needs to get done, but is not getting done? And I think with this one, you really have to be brutally honest with your answers, because again, that kind of goes back to hiding behind some of the tasks that we do hide behind so that we can avoid the hard stuff. So we need to really kind of hone in on what needs to get done. And then, can someone else help with any of these things on the list? Be frank and just don't kid yourself. You don't have to do it all, and you're probably not equipped to do it all. So, and then think about those things that only you can do, that you must retain. So these are like 5 great questions to ask yourself, and then kind of fill out the matrix. We have lots of different at Belay. We have a lot of different things, a lot of different tasks that we recommend, and Lucy recommended the email management calendar, but there's expense reports, there's creating templates, there's onboarding new clients. I mean, all kinds of things that you can consider delegating, setting up systems, setting up a CRM or client relations management software. So you just really kind of, ask yourself and document what you're doing on a regularly scheduled basis, and then what of those things can actually be delegated.
Teresa, before you go to the next slide, can we go back to that one? I love, again, I'm just going to talk about like the big philosophy behind what we talk about in our world and how it really gels with what you're talking about. We have 2 questions that we encourage people to ask, and one is called the purpose question, and one is the productivity question. And I see both of them within the question. These are like think time questions that you're having people answer, but one is the purpose question is, what can only I do? And when we weight our activities in the think time process, we give heavy weight. I mean, if no one else can do this, these are going to be, parenting, spouse, as far as on the personal life, you've got some very personal relationships. No one else can be the mother of your children, or, the father of your children. No one else can be the grandfather. No one else can be certain roles in life. You just have to really evaluate the positions you have with people. And then organizationally, there are certain tasks you are created and designed to do. And if you don't do them, they won't be done. And so those types of things are the purpose activities, and those are heavily weighted. Like, we want to get those on the calendar first. And then the productivity question that we encourage people to ask is not, how can I get this all done? But we just take that one little word, I, out. And then you say, how can this all get done? And when you take the I out, then it really opens up so much opportunity for brainstorming, creative solutions that, when we have to have the I in the equation, we are limited in what we can do, because we have 24 hours a day. Nobody has more than that. And the creativity, the energy, and the insight that will happen when we let go of ourselves, and take the I out of the question to say, how can this get done? Even if it involves without me, that really moves things forward. So then you're living a life of both purpose and productivity when you bring it all together. And so this is beautiful. Thank you so much.
No, I love that. I love that. And I mean, just opening yourself up to taking the eye out and how that introduces creativity and thought processes that are really outside of what you could possibly do on your own is a beautiful thing.
There's so much more you can do. It takes the I guess the glass ceiling off your life, you know?
Yeah. Take the lid off yourself. That's what we say it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, because we're gonna. How are we on time? Is anybody?
We have 15 minutes left.
Okay. All right. So moving on. Then how to delegate? Just keeping in mind that it is a learned skill, and there are both soft skills and hard skills required to delegate effectively. So the soft skills of delegation, again, keeping in mind that your job is to inspire and motivate people by extending trust. The soft skills are kind of that warm and fuzzy part of dealing with people in general. So kind of thinking through really what does your team look like, and what realizing that everyone is different. So when you are dealing with people, how are you communicating with them? Know those people that you're leading. Realize that no two people are the same. Identifying the language of appreciation or their love language. What motivates your team? Be aware that you're needing to praise your team member. When you catch them doing something good, give them that praise. And keep in mind that criticism will actually negate 20 praises. One critical comment will actually negate about 20 praises that you give someone. So be careful in when you're giving feedback as well. If something does go wrong, and it will, make sure that you give feedback. Be kind, be clear, and be firm with the feedback. Something that we utilize here at Belay that really helps us understand our teammates is we utilize a document called All About Me, which anybody could actually put this into use in their own organization. But it's a document that we all fill out, and there are questions like, what is your favorite candy? Where do you like to shop? Of course, how many kids do you have? That sort of thing. But this is housed in a central Dropbox so that as you are working with a team member, if you want to show some appreciation, which we're real big on appreciation, you can just go to that document and kind of figure out, how do they receive appreciation? Because the way we give it as a leader is not necessarily how it's received by that person on the other side who you're delegating to. So we utilize some things like that, and again, that kind of goes back to just realizing that part of delegating is using your people skills, the soft and fuzzy part of your personality.
Teresa, I want to give an example of that, and this is an internal example, but I'm in Metro Atlanta, and we had the remnants of, I forgot the hurricane from Florida 2 years ago, whatever that was, but we had the very remnants of it. But I live in a neighborhood, I've lived here for 30 years, and the winds were bad enough that probably a 50, 60-year-old tree ended up dropping in my driveway and landed literally inches from my house. It was absolutely terrifying. And within 2 days, I had gotten a movie and dinner gift card from my company. And then All About Me, my favorite thing to do, my hobby was going to the movies, and my favorite restaurant was this Italian restaurant. And within 24 hours, I had that, and it meant the world to me. So
yeah,
just a real example.
Yeah, I mean, people don't mind being led as long as they feel appreciated along the way. And in fact, I think people are looking for leaders that make them feel valued and appreciated. So yeah, thanks. That's a great example.
And I'll say from the counseling perspective, I'm a licensed professional counselor. The support that we need in our daily life makes a huge difference. You could be going through tremendous difficulty or have a lot of things on your shoulders, but if you feel supported, it makes the biggest difference for all of your being.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just in the interest of time, we're going to move on to the hard skills of delegation. And again, keeping in mind that delegation doesn't necessarily come naturally to everyone. We can learn it, but we have to kind of use both our hard and our soft skills. The hard skills are just the specifics of delegating. Start with the why. We are really, sorry about that. We're really big here in communicating the why. When someone understands why you're asking them to do something, and they understand what their contribution is and how they perform is part of a much bigger picture, they understand the why behind it, you're typically going to get much better results. So start with the why. Be specific. This is where over communication comes in. So speak in terms of deadlines and expectations. So for example, if you're asking somebody to put together a spreadsheet, until the person you're delegating to really understands you and your thought patterns, which does happen, the more you extend trust and the more you build trust between a working relationship, that person that you're delegating will start to fill the gap when there's information not provided just naturally because they've worked with you long enough. But in the beginning, being very specific as to what your expectations are. Back to the spreadsheet example, if you want X amount of columns and you want X colors used, etc., you want this chart, whatever, being very, very specific, because if you are not giving those specifics, the person that you're delegating to is going to resort back to what they know. And then they're going to fill the gap in the information provided with what they know, and they're going to roll with it. So in the beginning, being that specific is going to help narrow that gap as you work together as to expectations and how they're being met. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm wondering, is that something, as you guys have worked with so many leaders and visionary leaders, is that hard for a lot of people when they're starting?
It is, because it kind of goes back to some of the misconceptions. If I got to explain it, I'll just do it myself. But the reward of delegating, again, you have to kind of keep that in the back of your mind. The time that you get back to be able to focus on those things that only you can do is so invaluable. And yes, it is a difficult. That's why we were saying it is difficult. It's a lot easier to talk about than it is to actually do.
I bet you guys do you guys end up coaching the people that, like, as you have virtual assistants, do they end up learning how to coach the visionaries and how to be specific, or how do you help the visionaries? Because
that's a great question. And I know Lucy's going to have some input here too, but we do coach our clients and our VAs, and as our virtual assistants are supporting clients, they learn the communication style of their client that they're serving, and they will actually help them get to where they need to be. Because being delegated to is you have to kind of think about what it looks like to be on the other side of you. You've heard that saying. Well, someone that's being delegated to will also learn to pull out the information that they need as they're going along the way. But yes, we're definitely coaching around that. Lucy, did you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just tell you, one of the things that I implemented when I was onboarding clients, leaders, and virtual specialists is I always encouraged a feedback Friday. So at the end of the week, these 3 questions were asked both ways, from the specialist to the leader, from the leader to the specialist. It's very non-confrontational, but it's, what would you like me to keep doing? What would you like me to stop doing? And what would you like me to start doing? And so that opens the door to communication and building trust and understanding each other and how to work together.
Love it. So also, going back to the hard skills of delegation, don't forget to communicate the who, the what, the where, and the when, along with the why.
And Teresa, we are just about 5 minutes away.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so here's something else to consider. When you are delegating, there are what we consider 5 levels of delegation, and you may fall in any one of these areas. The goal is to get to number 5. The first level of delegation is do specifically as I've outlined for you. And that may be where we're at now. But again, you're going to want to increase to the point where you get to number 5. Gather information and please report back is the second level of delegation. The third level of delegation is propose how it should be handled. Go do your research, outline the options, and come back and make a recommendation. Provide the solution to me. The fourth level of delegation, handle it completely, and then come back and tell me what you did. What are the results? Fifth level is handle it completely, and there's no need to inform me. I've completely handed over this task to you and trust you 100% with the results. So those are the 5 levels of delegation. It's always a great idea to decide where you want to be, where you're at, actually, I should say, and then where you want to be and when, and really work at it, because again, it is a learned skill, and it is a work in progress always. The last slide is really just something to think about. Missed expectations will happen. Life is messy, and we just say stock up on wet wipes. But knowing the importance of what's important is knowing how you're going to handle those missed expectations, right? So how are we going to give the feedback? How are we going to fill the gap between expectation and result? We're going to fill it with kindness, with grace, with positive feedback. We're going to be clear and concise so that we can continue to delegate. We're going to look in the mirror and we're going to say, wait a minute, where did I have a part in this missed expectation? Was I clear, and did I communicate? Did I over communicate? So those are some of the things to think about. Give people the benefit of the doubt and realize that people don't want to disappoint. It's just naturally, we just don't want to disappoint. So I just think, I love this slide. There's so many things that we can think about when we have to deal with missed expectations, but we have to be intentional about it. We have to know how we're going to handle these missed expectations before they happen. And I think that is super important. Anything that we want to add to this here?
No, I just thought it would be, if anybody has any questions, you can go to that chat button and put the question there, or feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and pipe in. That, I think we're a small enough group that's okay. But go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah, just to wrap it up, be someone worth following. Delegation is necessary. So start delegating now. There's a couple of things on this slide that we suggest. Write down 3 reasons why you need to start delegating. Now we know what we should delegate, so write down the top 3 tasks that by delegating you'll feel a certain burden lifted. So you can look at it that way, like what would you love to get off your plate that would actually give you just a sense of more freedom and time and margin. And then the next steps was write down a plan for the next 7 to 21 days to delegate more often. And then be intentional with the plan and putting it to use. So the delegation matrix, if you want to download that, you can visit belaysolutions.com/delegation matrix and download that and just work through that. So did any questions come in?
I don't see any questions yet. I will say that we are going to have this webinar available at think-time.com/delegation. And you can get the delegation matrix there as well. You can also get the replay of this. I know there are lots of times where I'm like, I need to write that down, but I'm just going to watch it over and over again because there's so much to glean and so much to learn. You guys breathe this every day. But the first time I heard Brian Miles speak, I felt a sense of hope because I realized, I was at the point of realizing I cannot do what I want to do. I feel like I have a purpose to live, but I cannot get there. I have too much. My baseline of my life is just too much to be able to do the purposeful things I wanted to add on top. And when he talked about the personal and the professional being one and using a virtual assistant to kind of relieve the pressure and then speak for me to other people and kind of be an extension of myself, I could see the vision of, oh my goodness, that could really allow my dreams to move forward more than I thought I could. So I'm a huge fan, and I want to spread the feeling of hope to other people through sharing Belay.
Thank you, Christine. That is so well said. having any assistant, anybody on your team that can be an extension of yourself is an awesome feeling, and it's what we strive for. You will hear us say that the virtual assistant will work to be an extension of you. But remember, it does take work, and it takes that initial investment. It takes trust, and it takes being very intentional. So, and hopefully we covered those things, and it was valuable time spent today. Certainly it was, I enjoyed it, and I'm sure Lucy did as well.
Yeah. And I think that you guys were going to offer a special discount for anyone who started off of this webinar, right?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a half off the implementation fee special. So if you do inquire at Belay Solutions and you are connected with more than actually, you could just ask for Lucy. But as part of just being affiliated with Christine and Think Time, we would like to offer half off our what we call implementation fee, or it's the one-time setup fees, the fees to get started.
That's awesome. And you can find, you'll see a little link to that at the think-time.com/delegation page as well.
Great.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.